up your she'll floss your teeth with my shoelaces, nigga. Play with me, bro. Don't play with me, bro. Don't play with mine, bro. Don't play with mine.
Remember how you and Wallow were crying? You and Wallow were crying. Oh, my son.
Charleston White thought he was just stirring up drama, but this time he crossed the wrong family. After dragging T.I.'s son King Harris and even invoking the name of Trayvon Martin, the internet exploded and T.I. snapped. What?
I got willing to risk their lives and freedom to die by me and mine. You hear me? Why don't play with me, man?
It started as petty trolling spiraled into threats, police calls, and a father ready to risk everything to protect his blood. But the real question, is Charleston's obsession with King just jealousy or something much darker? He thought it was just another day of running his mouth online, but this time, Charleston White went way too far. For years, he built his name off shock value, disrespect, and chaos, clowning rappers, mocking tragedies, and dragging families just to keep his name alive. But then he made the fatal mistake of aiming his venom at the wrong person, T.I.'s son, King Harris. First, it looked like the same old Charleston routine, cheap jokes, wild insults, and desperate attempts to grab attention. But when he started threatening King and even had the audacity to drag Trayvon Martin's name into the mix, people stopped laughing. Suddenly, it wasn't entertainment anymore. It was disturbing. It was dangerous. And that's when T.I. snapped.
Please, just pull me up to speed, man. Just pull me up to speed. How some grown man had some shit to say about my son.
Not as a rapper, not as an actor, not even as a celebrity. He snapped as a father watching a grown man nearly 50 years old tear into his 20-year-old son like it was a comedy skit. A father who had been patient long enough. And when T.I. spoke, his message shook the internet. Tension was electric because everyone knew T.I. wasn't bluffing.
Gang, I got family. I got who willing to risk their lives and freedom to die by me and mine. You hear me?
Charleston thought he was creating another storm for clicks, but this time, he had no idea what kind of fire he had just unleashed. The question now wasn't if T.I. would respond, it was how far he'd go to protect his blood. And what happened next exposed a side of Charleston White that left even his own fans stunned. Charleston White thought he could laugh it off. He thought mocking King Harris would just spark another viral moment. But what he didn't realize was that this time, the mask slipped. His words revealed something deeper. Not comedy, not entertainment, but pure jealousy. I'm a nobody. Your son a nobody. Those words didn't sound like jokes. They sounded like bitterness. They sounded like a man nearly 50 years old, looking at a young 20-year-old with opportunity, confidence, and family support, and realizing he never had any of it. And that's when people started connecting the dots. Charleston isn't laughing at King. He's envying him. He's hating on his success. Cause while King Harris is stepping into adulthood, commanding respect and building influence, Charleston White is watching his own career collapse. Think about it. Charleston's platform is shrinking, his legal problems are piling up, his reputation is cracking, and the same man who once bragged about being fearless online is now allegedly scared to even log in. That's not toughness, that's desperation. Meanwhile, T.I. didn't hold back. He ripped Charleston apart, exposing the truth for everyone to see. He called him miserable, a grown man attacking children just to keep his name in the conversation. And that's what hit hardest, because it wasn't just a clapback, it was reality. And reality is brutal. A man nearly 50, picking fights with teenagers while his own world crumbles around him. But the question is, how far was Charleston willing to go to drag King down with him? Before we dive into Charleston's messy past, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because trust me, the receipts we're about to pull will leave you speechless. The deeper you dig into Charleston White's history, the clearer it gets. This isn't a man built on strength, success, or wisdom. This is a man built on chaos. His so-called legacy, trail of scandals, arrests, and betrayals that reads more like a circus act than a career. Remember, this is the same Charleston White who bragged about testifying against his own friends. The same man who got arrested for pepper spraying a cat. Yes, a cat. The same loudmouth who picked fights at comedy shows, only to cry for help and call 911 when things got too real. That's not toughness. That's desperation wrapped up in clown shoes. And now, he's aiming that same energy at a 20-year-old. Why? Because deep down, he knows King Harris represents everything he never was. Young, respected, loved, and backed by real family. Contrast is painful. T.I., a man with everything to lose, fighting to protect his bloodline. And Charleston, a man with nothing left but a fading voice and a trail of self-inflicted wounds. But here's where it gets darker. Charleston's past isn't just messy, it's violent. 14, he was caught up in a robbery that ended in a man's death. He spent 7 years locked away in juvenile detention. He lost his right eye in an accident. He grew up without a father, drowning in dysfunction. In Instead of healing, he weaponized his pain. Instead of redemption, he chose revenge on the world. And now, decades later, that rage has a new target, King Harris. But Charleston made one crucial mistake. He forgot that King doesn't stand alone. He stands with T.I., and T.I. was ready to remind him exactly what that means. Charleston White thought he had picked the perfect victim, a young man still finding his footing, still stepping into adulthood. But he underestimated King Harris, because instead of staying silent, instead of letting an internet troll drag his name through the dirt, King did something Charleston never expected. He clapped back. On October 9, 2022, King Harris went live on Instagram, and what happened next shook the entire narrative. With thousands watching, King didn't lose his cool, he didn't throw wild insults, and he didn't look rattled. Instead, he looked calm, collected, controlled, and that's what made it sting even more. He called Charleston exactly what he is, a snitch, a coward, a man who preys on the youth just to keep his own name alive. And then King hit where it really hurt, Charleston's history. He reminded everyone how Charleston had bragged about cooperating with police, testifying against his own people, and hiding behind the same system he pretends to fight against. The irony was painful. A teenager calmly dismantling the fearless Charleston White with axe, exposing his hypocrisy in front of the entire internet. And in that moment, Charleston's tough guy act cracked wide open. Cause what man pushing 50 can stomach being outclassed by someone barely 18? But instead of backing down, Charleston did the unthinkable. He doubled down. And what came out of his mouth next shocked even his own supporters. Because this wasn't comedy anymore. This wasn't trolling. What he said crossed into territory so reckless, it should have ended his career on the spot. October 10, 2022, the day Charleston White officially went too far. The insults weren't enough. Clowning wasn't enough. Petty name-calling wasn't enough. So, he escalated. And what came out of his mouth left people stunned. Instead of backing off after King Harris exposed him, Charleston doubled down with threats that nobody could believe. He dragged Trayvon Martin's name into the feud, invoked George Zimmerman, and weaponized one of the most painful tragedies in modern Black history just to hurt a teenager. That wasn't trolling. That wasn't comedy. That was reckless. That was cruel. The internet exploded. Fans, critics, and even Charleston's own supporters agreed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a grown man nearly 50 years old threatening a rapper's child and using racial trauma as a prop for attention. The backlash was instant and it was ugly. But Charleston didn't stop there. He bragged about contacting Atlanta police. He even tried to reach Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis, attempting to get King Harris arrested. Think about that. A man who constantly claims he's here to mentor the youth, trying to throw a 20-year-old into the system. Hypocrisy at its highest level. And that's when T.I. lost all patience. He wasn't playing industry games anymore. He wasn't thinking about music or business deals. He was thinking like a father, and his warning to Charleston was crystal clear. Play with my child and that's it. But what happened after that call took this feud from ugly to downright bizarre. For a split second, it looked like things might cool down. Behind the scenes, a phone call actually took place between T.I. and Charleston White on October 10th. The goal? To squash the beef before it spiraled even further. But if you know Charleston, you know peace was never going to last. Instead of using that call to make things right, Charleston walked away bragging that it didn't work. He twisted the entire moment into more fuel for his drama machine. And just when people thought he couldn't get any more outrageous, Charleston flipped the feud into a circus act. He actually challenged T.I. to a celebrity boxing match. Yes, a boxing match. He demanded Steve Harvey as the referee. And to top it all off, he even suggested T.I. wear an eye patch, so it would be fair. Can you imagine? A man threatening a child one day, then trying to turn it into a pay-per-view spectacle the next. To Charleston, this was all entertainment. To T.I., it was life and death, protecting his son. And the contrast couldn't be more clear. T.I. had family, legacy, and a future to protect. Charleston had nothing but a loud mouth and a desperate need for attention. But Charleston wasn't done. He dragged out one of his favorite tired attacks, accusing T.I. of being a federal informant, pointing back to the old 2007 Crime Stoppers campaign. The irony? This is the same Charleston White who testified against his own co-defendants and bragged about it. The hypocrisy was laughable. The desperation was undeniable. But the next move T.I. made flipped the entire narrative and showed Charleston he picked the wrong family to play with. And if you're still here, you already know this story is wild, so smash that like button and drop a comment. Do you think T.I. was right to snap back, or did Charleston push things too far? By November 2022, T.I. decided it was time to remind Charleston White exactly who he was dealing with. He wasn't just a father. He wasn't just a businessman. He was still one of the sharpest rappers alive, and he was about to prove it. T.I. hopped on Juicy Fruit's track Step, and the streets instantly knew what it was, a Charleston White diss. But this wasn't some sloppy, low-blow insult session. T.I. played played it smart. His bars were sharp, precise, and calculated. Instead of rolling in the mud, he dissected Charleston's credibility piece by piece, dismantling his image with skill only a veteran could deliver. And the beauty of it? Ted didn't even have to get dirty. He didn't scream. He didn't rant. He didn't match Charleston's clown energy. He simply reminded everyone that he could destroy someone with artistry, not chaos. It was a master move. But Charleston, being Charleston, missed the point completely. Instead of feeling the sting of being dissed by a superstar, he treated it like a win. He praised the track. He even begged to be on the remix. Let that sink in. The man who was just torn apart on wax wanted to join in. That moment exposed the desperation in its purest form. To Charleston, even humiliation felt like victory because it meant he was still being noticed. He didn't care if he was the punchline. Attention was all he wanted. But that's exactly what made him dangerous. Cause a man that is thirsty for relevance will say anything, do anything, and cross any line to keep his name alive. And as time went on, he proved it, again and again. By now, the pattern was undeniable. Charleston White didn't just argue. He didn't just debate. He had a toxic playbook, one he's been running for years. And King Harris was only the latest target. Step 1. Provoke. He picks a name, usually a young black man tied to a successful rapper, and throws out the nastiest, most outrageous insults he can think of. Step 2. Mock. He drags their image online, pokes fun at their struggles, and pushes the narrative until the internet explodes. And step 3. Play victim. The second the backlash hits, Charleston flips the script. Suddenly, he's the one being attacked. Suddenly, he's crying about being misunderstood. It's manipulation at the highest level. And it works because every reaction, every clapback, every headline is oxygen to him. Without attention, he's nothing. But with attention, even negative attention, he gets to keep his name buzzing. And that's why he keeps circling back to King Harris. Whenever King faces a personal challenge or hits the headlines, Charleston swoops in like a vulture, ready to pounce on the vulnerability. He thrives off the cruelty. He thrives off the chaos. And then, when the heat comes down on him, he hides behind excuses, blaming everyone but himself. But here's the thing, this isn't just internet trolling anymore. This isn't just petty drama for clicks. Because when a man starts obsessing over someone else's child, when he builds his brand off tearing down the next generation, that's not entertainment. That's dangerous. And the most disturbing part? Charleston's obsession with King Harris wasn't random. It was personal. And the reason why cuts deeper than anyone realized. To understand why Charleston White can't stop coming for King Harris, you have to go back, way back, to where it all started. Because this obsession isn't random. It's rooted in a lifetime of pain, dysfunction, and bitterness that he never healed from. Charleston was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1977. His childhood? Broken, violent, fatherless. By the time he was 14, he was already caught up in a robbery that ended in tragedy. A man lost his life, and Charleston spent 7 years in juvenile detention. 7 years behind bars before he was even old enough to vote. And it didn't end there. Somewhere along the way, he lost his right eye in an accident. Growing up without guidance, without love, without stability, Charleston didn't find redemption. He found rage. That dysfunction became fuel. And instead of healing, he turned it into a weapon. So when the internet came along, Charleston didn't rise because of talent. He didn't rise because of wisdom. He rose by spewing the same bitterness he had been carrying his entire life. Mocking the dead, dragging successful rappers, attacking families. It wasn't comedy. It wasn't mentorship. It was unresolved trauma disguised as shock value. And that's why King Harris cut so deep for him. Cause King has everything Charleston never had. A father who shows up, a family that protects him, opportunities that open doors instead of closing them. For Charleston, watching that is like staring in a mirror that reflects every scar he's been running from since childhood. And instead of dealing with that pain, he projects it outward. He tries to drag others down into the same misery he's been stuck in for decades. But here's the catch. The more he aims at King, the more obvious it becomes that this isn't about King at all. It's about Charleston fighting his own demons and losing. At the end of the day, this was never just some internet beef. It wasn't just a rapper versus a loudmouth troll. This was a father versus a man obsessed with tearing down everything he never had. And Charleston White made the ultimate mistake. He chose the wrong family. By late 2022, his entire act was unraveling. The shock tactics were stale. The attention was fading. And in a desperate attempt to stay relevant, he locked in on T.I.'s bloodline. But instead of boosting his clout, he lit a fuse he couldn't put out. Because T.I. made it clear, don't play with my child, don't play with mine. That wasn't rap bravado. That wasn't celebrity ego. That was the voice of a father ready to put everything, his freedom, his reputation, even his career, on the line to protect his son. And when a man with that much to lose speaks like that, you know it's real. Meanwhile, Charleston's own life tells a darker story. Arrests stacking up, charges of animal cruelty, aggravated assault, public meltdowns. His so-called career was reduced to mugshots and online rants. He isn't rising, he's crashing, and the world is watching every ugly second. The irony is almost poetic. A man with no foundation, no stability, no real legacy, trying to tear down a young man who has all three. And in doing so, Charleston exposed himself more than he ever exposed King. So now the question isn't will Charleston White self-destruct, it's when, because one thing's for sure, T.I. won't let him drag his family down in the process. And after this war of words, one truth echoes louder than anything else. Charleston White picked the wrong enemy.